Helping me go through the nation's mastheads, I'm joined from Adelaide this evening by columnist and journalist from the Adelaide Advertiser, Caleb Bond. Good evening to you. As well as joining me here in the Perth studios, making his Sky News debut, it's a very good evening to the Media Stable's Managing Director, Nick Hayes. And in our Brisbane studios tonight, Sky News contributor Frank Russo. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your company. Let's go straight to the Australian newspaper, where I'm sure many of the discussions will be dominated by a lot of the stories relating to the bushfires and where we are in regards to the recovery effort and where we are in regards to what is happening with the various state governments. And I will go to the first story here out of New South Wales, an exclusive by Yoni Bashan, the New South Wales political correspondent, who says the volunteer firefighters who fought this season's historic bushfires, they were sent to fire fronts with outdated trucks and personal protective equipment, at times poor radio communications and substandard technological capabilities, despite multiple reviews recommending urgent upgrades. Frank, I'll go to you on this one first. 3,820 fire trucks were used in New South Wales to try and fight these blazes. I don't think anybody's trying to point the finger at the fact that these fire trucks required upgrades to the technology and the resources that were associated with these fire trucks. But surely this has to be something that not just the New South Wales government but state governments right around Australia are making sure that every single rural firefighting service is properly equipped.
That's right, Oliver, and I think it's an absolute wake-up call to all the state governments out there. This latest bushfire season, I think, has shown how behind we are in a lot of things. I mean, why were our firefighters? They had fire trucks that weren't even operating properly. Why have we got this? You got to ask that question. My question is now all us Aussies, we donated all this money and everything. We've come up, over $140 million from the various bushfire appeals. Where is that money going? And this money now should go towards fixing up these fire trucks and for these firefighters, their safety.
Spot on there, Frank. Nick Hayes, I'll bring you in on this discussion as well. The New South Wales Emergency Services Minister, David Elliott, has asked for a business case. So this is what was reported in The Australian from last year. Surely there's no need for a business case here, Nick. I think common sense would just tell governments that you need to resource all of our firefighting resources and all of our firefighting services properly. Why do you need a business case?
I don't think you need a business case, Ollie. I think what we as we always do, when the fires go out, we're now looking at what's happened and how it's gone to play. And I think, even before we have a bushfire or an emergency, there seems to be a bit too much complacency going on. There's been a lot of reports. There's a lot of reports going through that the federal government was informed. A lot of the state governments were saying that we don't have the right equipment. We don't have everything in place should something like this happen. And then it does, and now we're finding out now that they didn't have it. I mean, these are the people that are fighting our fires. They're protecting our country. We should be looking after them, and we should be getting them the best equipment that's there. And that just obviously is not happening. And as far as the case study goes, I think what we really need to do is, with the money that's been raised, let's go away and put the right equipment in front of these people.
Caleb Bond, an issue you're very, very familiar with, of course, on Kangaroo Island. You've been running plenty of stories there in the Adelaide Advertiser about the response there on Kangaroo Island. And I read with interest as well on the front of the Australian tomorrow the fact that we've still got 89 houses that burnt down on Kangaroo Island, and you've got local residents now just fed up. They are sick and tired of all of the talk. They want action, they want help, they want assistance. You can understand the frustrations on Kangaroo Island, Caleb.
Absolutely, because the problem with Kangaroo Island is that the only two ways to access it are by plane or by ferry, and neither are particularly cheap, and they don't have the labour force on the island to help them rebuild. And there are people over there saying, look, the main driver of the economy on Kangaroo Island is tourism. And we've run a very concerted campaign since the bushfires here in SA and broadly across the country to tell people that the island isn't completely done. You can still go and enjoy many things on the island, and in fact they need your tourist dollars more than ever. But if the people on the west of the island don't have an opportunity to rebuild, they will miss out on those tourism dollars forevermore. It is absolutely necessary that the state government does everything within their power to get people feet on the ground on Kangaroo Island to rebuild. Places like the Southern Ocean Lodge, which is internationally renowned as a tourist spot. I mean, without these things, Kangaroo Island will be in real trouble, and the government should be doing everything it possibly can to help them rebuild, because without it, they're stuffed.
Yeah, and Shane Lee, I think he makes the most salient point here on the front of the Australian. He says, I felt like spewing up. This was after attending the State Parliament special session. He says, I didn't need to sit there listening to all these clowns crapping on about what a great job we have all done. So if that's a message that every single state government and every single politician in the federal government can take away, stop patting yourselves on the back. The recovery effort has only just begun, and they need to continue to work hard. And Nick Hayes, they need to make sure that we are providing solutions for these communities.
Spot on, Ollie, and this is where a real government becomes a government and actually starts working for its people. I mean, the job is half done. Yes, the fires are out, but now it's time to go away and rebuild and help those that have gone through it. I mean, that fella you're referring to, he was out fighting someone else's fire, lost his house. He's now been living in a caravan for the last 45 days. He wants to rebuild his home, and the governments have got to go away and release those funds. And while we're at it, also to the charities that we've been raising such wonderful money for and donating a lot of money right across the country, they've got to start releasing those funds and get them to the people that actually need it.
Yeah, and staying there with the Australian as well, Frank, I think we take some heart from the fact that leading these recovery efforts is, of course, the former Governor-General, Peter Cosgrove. And I think he makes a very, very important point in the paper tomorrow, indicating that we can't have disaster fatigue. We can't move on from this. Although many Australians might think, oh, that was yesterday's story or last week's story or last month's story. No, this is impacting so many communities right around Australia. And if we were in the shoes tonight of Shane Lee, we don't want Australians to stop talking about this. We don't want Australians to get over this, Frank.
That's right, and I've got a lot of respect for Sir Peter Cosgrove. He was, back in 2006, he led the recovery after Cyclone Larry hit my hometown of Innisfail. So he knows what there is involved with getting towns and getting into recovery. And he would know firsthand, and what he's saying is correct. We can't have fatigue on this situation, you know?
No, you can't at all.